Righty-ho, so we're just about now to start working on the primary chain case and fitting the primary chain case to the crankcases. And so first thing we're going to do is sort out the new sort of rear primary chain casing. This is the original casing. And we bought a new casing because we discovered that this was out of line, been fitted out of line, and was much too far in, and so the chain was rubbing badly on the back of the case. You can see it scored it so badly it's actually gone through, and that is where the swinging arm. That's where the round of the swinging arm was pushing on the casing, and obviously with the swinging arm going up and down, that wore that circle. So that's why we've got a new primary chain case. You can see there where the chain has come right through from the other side. So the first thing we're going to do I'll be taking the studs off the rotor or alternator studs off here and putting them in the new casing. Then we've got the dowels, which aren't in the new casing, but we've been supplied with new dowels, so that's the first thing we'll do, and then I may fit the alternator rubber for the lead through to the back. It's always a pain to fit that thing. But two things. Oh yeah, before I forget. So as you can see, the seal at the back is different on these two. This one's got a big dish sticking out, and this one hasn't. So I thought, oh blimey, have we been sent the wrong casing? Is this like from a 750 or something? So I rang Ashley at Andover Norton, and he said no, apparently this was a fairly short-lived attempt by Norton to try and reduce oil leakage. It's supposed to fling the oil off, and so they introduced them at some point, but then discontinued them because it didn't really work. So hence the fairly standard one we've got here. Oh yeah, and where am I? Oh yeah, and of course we've got the new felt oil seal on the far side. There you go, which goes inside the inside here. That does slide. It's very tight. That's okay, and that seal will go inside there. But the main thing is that we've decided to fit a belt drive conversion rather than a primary chain conversion. And so we don't have to worry too much about oil leakage. The reason for fitting a belt drive, there's various reasons. Number one, it won't leak oil. Number two, it should never need adjusting. And number three, there shouldn't be any problem with clutch slip. I'll talk a bit more about the belt drive conversion when it arrives, but basically, the clutch plates and that were designed to run dry. So they actually run better dry than with oil in. When the oil gets in, the oil is in the primary chain case for the primary chain, not for the clutch. So when oil from the gets into between the clutch plates, they can start slipping. Now also the Surflex clutch plates that I recommend and I use, apparently they're unobtainable at the moment and don't really know when they're going to come back to be available. So we'd have had to buy a new primary chain and new clutch plates, which I can't buy anyway. So that'd be fairly expensive. And so we thought, well, we'll just buy a belt drive conversion. Now, because of that, we don't need new clutch plates because we can reuse the old plates because we just wash the oil off them and they'll be fine, because you don't have to have wonderful clutch plates because there's no oil. It's when the oil is introduced you need really good clutch plates that aren't going to slip. But I'll talk a bit more about that nearer the time. But to begin with, just going to move the stuff, get this prep ready, and then actually get it fitted to the crankcase, ready to take the internals. Right, just heating up the chain case in the Barbie, just so I can get the dowels in because they're a very tight fit, and so heat it up to expand it so I can get the dowels in the casing a bit easier. Take it up to about 200, it should be okay. Right, so I've taken the studs, the alternator studs out of the old casing, and they're in place, and I've put the two new dowels in, and somehow I managed to get the that felt sealing, which is nigh on impossible to do. I soaked it in oil and then I managed to stuff it in, but you know, it is a bit of a nightmare job. I supposed to spend 15 minutes, half an hour, just trying to get that sealing. The advantage in our case is I know that we're going to be using a belt drive, so that seal, and so there's going to be no oil in here, so that oil seal isn't critical. But then I've hit another problem. So I've just done that, and then what you do is you come and you trial fit it on the side, and do up those 3 bolts, and then this is the central mounting stud, which I've bolted to the engine cradle. But when you put that on, then you put it on loosely, then note the gap between the end of this long hex nut and the stud, and that's where, and then you take it back off again and put spacers on, so that when you tighten it back on again, the casing is hard up against those spacers, so that then when you tighten the central nut up, it's not going to bend the casing. The problem I've got is I've got this weird sort of uprated two bolt adjuster, which is fine, but it seems to stick out too far this way, and it's interfering with the chain case. So I'm going to have to grind it down. I'll show you now if I can. Okay, so I've just loosely fitted the casing, fine, and then you can see that there's a gap there, which suggests how many spacers we want. But if I haven't tightened these nuts up yet, but if I push the casing in at the front, you can see it's sitting proud at the back here. And the reason for that is that this chain guard here is hitting this uprated flipping adjuster here. So I'm going to have to grind a bit off the adjuster so that it goes in. Because at the moment, if I did these 3 nuts up, then there'd be massive tension on the casing, because obviously the casing wants to go in a little bit nearer. Yeah, and so I'm going to have to grind that casing away to clear this adjuster, and maybe a bit of the back here to clear the sort of the bolted bit of the adjuster. So there you go. Right then, so I've got the angle grinder, and I've just ground down the edge of the chain guard just enough so it clears this adjuster, and I've not bolted it up yet, but I've just firmly put the casing on and made sure that it's flat all the way around, which it now is. And you can see we've now got a very small space that just needs some spacers on between the long nut and the back of the casing, and we can still see that although the gap is much smaller, so I can focus it, we've still got a substantial gap between the casing and the swinging arm. Okay, jolly good. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get some spacers, which are just going to be washers in my case, the right size for that gap. Take the thing on, put the washers on the back there, and then we'll actually put some well seal on, and the gasket, and we'll actually mount the casing onto the crankcase, which will be great. Okay, I put well seal on the both mating surfaces, although why I'm not sure, because of course we're not running the there's going to be no oil in the primary chain case, so we don't really need a seal, but force of habit. And I put the gasket on this side I've got my spacers, which in my case are 2 washers, so that the back of the casing is going to butt up nicely against them. So I can tighten that up without bending the case. It definitely is well clear of the swinging arm at the back. So hopefully we're okay. So pop this on. Hopefully I've got the gearbox shaft lined up correctly. Yeah, it's gone on. Good. Right. So then, we got 3. Where have we gone? There we go. 3 screws with their locking tabs that go on. 3 bolts. Right, yeah, there's no torque setting on these bolts, so I'm just doing them up fairly tight. Again, we're bolting straight into alloy, which isn't that strong, so you don't want to overdo it. And there's no need really in our case, because of course we're running the primary drive, because we're having a belt drive conversion. That's nice. There's a nice gap between the swinging arm and the back of the casing. It's nice and straight, sits well. The spacers on the back of this through bolt are just right, so I'm very happy with that. Eventually, now that we've got it to fit, now that it fits around this adjuster for the gearbox. If possible, use a pair of pliers on the lock tab. If we can just get on the end of it. No, it doesn't want to go. Right, the pliers won't do it. I'll see if the moulds will do it. Yeah, that's good. I've got that lock tab down. It's just better if you can save hammering things. Right, and there we have the inner chain case fitted, ready to take the internals. Got the rotor and the alternator, well, the stator to go on the rotor and the stator. And then of course we've got the belt drive conversion itself, which I'm quite excited, looking forward to putting that on. Oh, good. Everything's turning, yeah. Everything's good, yeah. And I'm pleased with that. I think that's on just right that. So that's great, job done.